Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I'm your instructor Asjid Mahmood from Faisalabad campus. Today we are going to discuss Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations. So I welcome you all in today's session. Topic for today's session. Today we are going to discuss Charles Dickens' art of grotesque characterization in Great Expectations. You are not quite familiar with the term grotesque characterization. Perhaps you are familiar with the term characterization, how the novelists present their characters, how they present their settings and other things in their novels or in their fiction. So today we are going to discuss a very specific you can say quality of Charles Dickens' specific quality during his characterization that is quite evident in Great Expectations. So hopefully we will learn many more things that we have already discussed in our previous lectures. So today's objectives will have a brief introduction of the novel. After that we will learn how Charles Dickens presents his characterization or his characters in his novel, specifically in Great Expectations. Then we will learn grotesque method of characters presentation, caricatures, environment, and situations. And by the end of the session, you will be able to see that how this novel is a fantasy versus realism. So it is a mixture of fantasy and realism. We will learn by the end of the session how this is a fantasy and how it is a real work, is a realistic work. As you all familiar with, it is from 19th century. Charles Dickens is the most prominent figure in Victorian novels, Victorian fiction. So Victorian fiction is very common and familiar for its structure, and its values is compact methodology and compact structuring. So we start from introduction. As you know, Charles Dickens, it is Charles Dickens' 13th novel. This is Great Expectations is Charles Dickens' 13th novel in row. Firstly, it has been written in the form of magazine name perhaps All the Year Round in 1860. Every chapter, from the figure of the bizarre criminal in the first chapter to the uncertainty in the last session, adds to the splendidly figurative structure. So this novel has a splendidly figurative structure. It has qualities like poetry. So you will learn how it is very close to poetry, but still Charles Dickens is of the view that he has not depicted his true ability of our true exploration of his personality in this novel, his artistic personality in this novel, as he himself shows in his friend's letter, where he highlights or he describes that the pivot on which the story will turn as a grotesque tragi-comic concept. So he is of the view that the story would build on a grotesque tragi-comic concept. So we'll learn that it is a tragedy as well as comic elements. We'll find throughout the novel tragedy and comic elements in the novel. So far as the Charles Dickens is quite familiar for his art of caricatures. So caricature is something related to comic, but today we will learn how it is tragi-comic as well. Okay, Dickens' power of vision, especially expressionistic power. We will learn how expressionistic power has been shown by Charles Dickens through his mouthpiece Pip, the character who is the mouthpiece of this novel. So he is also a first-person narration where the Pip, the protagonist of the novel, would narrate the whole story of the novel. So it has been written in first person narration, but he as a writer recorded their effects on the narrator. So expressions and their effects on the narrator has been recorded in this novel. So very prominent element, imagism. I am writing this term imagism, although it is quite modern term. We are not familiar up till now with imagism in a novel, but I must say he has used a lot of images in this novel to explain his area of interest, to explain his true images. So you can see it in the novel that the grotesque elements are separated into three parts, including characters, environment, and situation. We will learn in our next part of the novel, so the lecture. So we see how characterization has been shown in the novel. So we start from characters. So basically he is presenting his characters, his grotesque qualities through characters, through environment, and through situations. So we learn how he has depicted his uh, grotesque images through these three situations. You can say characters, environment, and situations. We will learn how abnormally or how in estrangement element of estrangement we find in these characters, environments, and situation that he presents as a in the shape of images in the novel. So grotesque images are concepts, and then he will show their relations with the idea Dickens has about the function of these images. So let's start with characters. So the characters in Charles Dickens novels are always very much important, as we have, if we see his most prominent novel, A Tale of Two Cities, the characters are the building blocks of the character of the novel. They are in fact the true depictions of society. So here in the novel we will focus on characters from Great Expectations only. So the grotesque pictures every so often have been related with caricature. So Mr. Charles Dickens is really very familiar for his art of caricaturing, but his Thomas has told that Dickens characters containing caricatures features are grotesque. So grotesque means strange. So we will learn that although we find that caricatures are something comical, overstatements of characteristics or odd features, are the characters that are presented in odd manner, are they may be the overstatements, but they would be the common things, comical. But in Charles Dickens characteristics, they are both grotesque caricatures. They are comical as well as tragic or fearful. So vivid features of caricatures, we will learn vivid features of caricatures in characters like Pip, Miss Havisham, and Magwitch. So these although all the characters are the true depictions of caricaturing qualities presented by Charles Dickens, but we will find the most prominent element from the depiction of Pip, Miss Havisham, and Magwitch. So they are also the very important characters of the novel. So we'll focus on only on these three to four these three characters due to the limited time. So we will start. We will see that when Mr. Pip describes the personality of Magwitch, at the first time he encounters Mr. Magwitch, so he sees that a fearful man, all in coarse grey, with a great iron on his leg, a man with no hat and with broken shoes, a man who had been soaked in water and smothered in mud and lamed by stones and cut by flints and stung by nettles and torn by briars, and whose teeth chattered in his head as he seized me by the chin. So the first time when Pip sees or watches, put a glance on the character of Magwitch, he depicts or describes the personality, Magwitch's personality, by using these adjectives. So from these adjectives we see how they are child. Also at that time, Pip is a child, a young of teenager child. So he has presented too much use of images, too much uh, adjectives has been associated, although they are both comical as well as sad. So if you see no hat, with broken shoes, a man, if you wish to draw a picture like bearing these qualities, and your portrait would be something very comical. But if you see through the lens of a child who is in front of a person who has no hat, maybe a symbol of gentlemanness, broken shoes, deprived of poverty, deprived with poverty, smothered in mud, maybe has been mingled with someone, lamed by stones, maybe he was lingering, he couldn't stand over his feet, and cut by flints and stung by nettles. So you can see that his teeth were chattered, and he was just a fearful symbol in front of a little kid. So here you can see this type of caricaturing. Also, this description by Pip is categorized as caricature because the comic and terrifying are as follows. You can see broken shoes, maybe they are a type of something comical, torn by briars, something fearful. Some people has uh, beat beat him with sticks, and his teeth chattered. You see that he is a terrifying personality, and his head are some exponents forming a horrific picture of a man. So there you see a mixture of comic and a terrifying personality. So this type of grotesque characterization has been presented by Charles Dickens in his novel. So you can see that how he has made a caricature that can give both the elements of fear and element of comic sense. Okay, if we move further, when Pip was describing Miss Havisham, so during this process, we see that she was dressed in white. Her shoes were white, and she had a long white veil. She had flowers in her hair, but her hair was white. She had not quite finished dressing, for she had one shoe on. I saw that the dress had been put upon the rounded figure. Young woman had shrunk to skin and bone. Now waxwork and skeleton seemed to have dark eyes like at me. So here again you can see that how terrifying, or how doubly meaning this statement have been presented by uh, Pip in the novel. So he, when first time he sees Miss Havisham, so she is in a white dressing, or as you all know from the plot story, that Miss Havisham was betrayed by a person who didn't come for getting her married. So she was at that time, from that time she is in wait of his her beloved, or her husband, you can say prospect husband. In he She is not fully dressed up. She is in white, as you know all, that the Christian community use white dress in their at their time of marriage. So she is wearing white suit and white dress, white shoes, and the white veil, so as the bridal dress. But the bride is so worn out. As you see, at one place he is presenting an imagery of a bride who is getting ready for her marriage. But when we look at, and straightway we see that she had not quite finished dressing, means she has not she is still dressing herself, as she has not put on her shoes quite well. But when we see that her hair were white also, so this shows that the bride has had a long white veil. Her hair was white. So here we see that the white hair are synonymous for the old age. So you can see the white hair are something bad, that are something strange, that we not find in the brides. Then we see that uh, dress had not been put. Rounded figure, young woman had shrunk to skin, so and bone. So here we see that she has some old age signs on his skin, on her skin. And now she has like she is like a skeleton. So from this pretty much statement, we are in a fix that whether she is in happy mood or in a sorrow mood. But as you all know, when we when we study the background from actually study the novel, we come to know that she has been betrayed by her husband, and she is still uh, revengeful, and she has grown a type of hate and abnormality in her personality, that she always keep on wearing white dress and waiting for her groom uh, groom. But at the same time, you can see that how Miss Havisham traits are bring Stella up to hate men, to hate young people, and never get married. So that is the thing, that how differently he has presented the characterization or the characters of his Miss Havisham. So we can see that there is an amalgamation of two happiness comic element and the sadness or terrifying element, so estrangement. Okay, not only he is focusing on human characters but also some other settings. He is pretty much aware from the he always in use to environments, always use gothic type of environments, a strange world, you can say. He is not also giving caricaturing the human people human, but also the environment also. When we see that environment, so some people say that Charles Dickens is of the view to generate the Gothic grotesque to show the sundry types of Pip's account throughout his childhood to adulthood by recounting some places as marsh. So whenever, as you know, this novel is a building storming novel where the Mr. Charles Dickens has brought up Pip's character from his childhood to manhood, so adulthood. So during this journey from childhood to manhood, the adulthood, Pip keep on recounting different elements, different scenarios, scenes using marsh. So marsh is a type, is a land, is a landscape that has some ambiguity in her, in its own self. So he uses the word marsh and the marshy areas many times in the novel. So marsh, as you see from this quotation from Great Expectation, the marshes were just a long black horizontal line. Then, as I stopped to look after him, and the river was just another horizontal line, not nearly so broad, nor yet so black, and the sky was just a row of long, angry red lines and dense black line intermixed. So from this statement again you would say that how he Pip, or you can say Charles Dickens, is mixing the different situations, different phenomena, and making us confused, or making us that this is a type of portrait that he is being portray on some type of canvas, or making a picture, or where he is giving different colors, different lines, or different rows to sea, to river, to marshy areas, to sky as well. So he has make a total image like a portrait. So from this marsh landscape you can see ambiguities. So from this element you can from this quotation you find a lot of ambiguity that can be a depiction of Pip's personality, that Pips is a ambiguous person. He is not pretty much clear from his heart or from his soul. So he is a character, you can say a round type of character that can have different sensibilities, a mixture of thoughts. You can see a fantasy type statements. So you can see the previous one and this one, you can find a fantasy like statement. A fantasy like statement are these that make us confused, that make us happy and also fearful. So this is a certain quality that we find in Charles Dickens' characterization, that he is pretty much confused, he is not happy with the situation, he is not happy with the people, the surroundings, and the characters are the world, you can say, overall. If we see Pip's explanation in chapter 3, he says that the mist was heavier, yet when I got out upon the marshes, so that instead of my running at everything, everything seemed to run at me. The gates and dikes and banks came bursting at me through the mist. The cattle came upon me with like suddenness, one black ox with a white cravat on. So here again you see that how he is mixing different ideas. It is like a dream like things, fantasy type elements that we find throughout the novel, throughout the character, when he is describing different characters, when he is describing different environments or aspects or incidents. So here again we see that he's using the word marsh and also using different scenarios that can make us confused that what is in fact he is really wish to express. So this image of the marsh expresses the inaptness of life. So he is of the view that the life is not absolutely fine, it is not in a streamline. So this is an you can say a symbol or some hints towards the autobiographical stance of Charles Dickens' life, where he is giving that he is not satisfied, he was not satisfied with his life at the time of childhood, as he was compelled to labor, he was compelled to work at factory, shoemaking factory. You, as you know, that he is also compelled to not study but to work at the time of his childhood. So he is always in a dissatisfaction, in a way of dissatisfaction. He is not clear, pretty much clear, crystal clear in his thoughts, in his ambitions, in his values. So this confusion, this chaos has been shown. The life of Charles Dickens' actual life may be associated here in his in his art of characterization, in art of presenting the things and environments in the novel in this novel, Great Expectations. So this is another type of satire also on the society of that of 19th century when Victorian age, then when there was an age of industrialization, poverty was everywhere and people were pretty much confused about their lives and they were uh, completely in chaos, they were living in fantasies. So here the true depiction of fantasy has been seen. Many other examples I can quote from the novel, but I have a limited time to cover this situation, so I would move to next because many elements we have to show. So when we look at Pip narrates Bernard's Inn, when for the first time Pip moved towards London, in Bernard, and he lodges or he stays at Bernard's Inn. He was happy that he is moving from this village to a city area where there would be a happy life and very it, you can say prosper life, and he will be of the view that he would be going towards or heading towards heaven. But what he found, what does he find? He finds this. You can see from this quotation, we entered this heaven through a wicket gate. Okay, this is the very first clause. You can see how he was thinking of heaven, and what does he get? What does he get? And were disgorged by in introductory passage into a melancholy little square that looked to me like a flat burying ground. So here we see that modernized, you can see that how what was the state of the cities at that time. There was not pretty much comfortable surroundings or comfortable places to live in city areas as well. So but he is also showing the modernism that they were not living at lavish places, but he finds a flat burying ground. So here is also you can find a lot of imageries, a lot of use of similes, metaphors in this throughout the novel. We are not discussing these things, but we are focusing on his estrangement, his way of expression, his way of grotesque characterization. It had the most dismal trees in it. So he found trees also in a dismal situation, dismal sparrows, dismal cats, dismal house. I thought the windows of the sets of chambers into these houses were divided, were in every stage of dilapidated, blind and curtain, crippled flower pots, cracked glass, dusty decay, a frowsy morning of soot and smoke attired this forlorn creation of Bernard. So here you can see that how he is depicting the life in city areas, and what he thought and what he gets. He was thinking of some lavish life at London, but he found that the Bernard's Inn was not a pretty much comfortable place, but a place like grave. You can see grave are a very fanciful place where you can see gothic elements. You can see you can find some a type of fearful place. So he was getting afraid of the city life. So there is a shift in his life, in his sentiments, that he was pretty much sure about getting rid of from the village life. But when he enters into, he was idealizing city life, but when he enters the city life, he again was in a fix. He was confused that what to do, and what was he thinking and what he gets. The place where the people lodged in London, it was Bernard Inn, and this is the way he describes this situation, describes this inn. So from this type of a lot of minute observations have been shown uh, Charles Dickens through Charles Dickens' lens. It shows his minute observation of of things and the place. It looks a first-hand knowledge, in fact. Okay, the third point is situations. How Charles Dickens create some situations, some different situations, mixing situations that make us confused, that make people confused. So there are difference. He is in fact in a situation to make a difference between working class and gentleman class. A gentleman class, you can say a gentry class, as is also always in demand of wish, is always in demand to become a gentleman from a, a lower middle boy. Pip wants to become a gentleman because he wants to become a gentleman to escape from the brutality and intimidation that characterize life on the marsh. So here you can see that uh, Pip was Pip was wishing to get rid of his life from marshy place, from his village, and he was in fact was wishing to become a gentleman by escaping from brutality of marshy areas. But what he finds again Bernard's Inn at uh, city area at London. But gentleman in the 19th century world involves expulsion and repression for someone like Pip, alienation from Joe, and the warmth of instinctive life which the blazing forge symbolizes. So here he is of the view that in the village area he has a soothing corner in the shape of Joe, his brother-in-law, who was always keep on soothing uh, Pip. But now he is not getting Pip. Also, he is also not getting such type of soothing uh, comments from Joe as well. And what type of things he finds at city place? He finds unemployment, poverty, and he shows that he can never become a gentleman in the 19th century, because the 19th century gentlemen are like alienated people. They think of their own selves, and they don't look on others. That the things he created in his personality, when he become an adult, he finds himself to he wishes to get rid from his association with Mr. Joe. Also he tried to get rid of the all previous connections from marshy area, and he wished to become a gentleman. So here you can see that in city areas he become uh, uh, more rigid type of personality. Pip become a rigid type of personality, but with the passage of time he gets more soothing situations. From this type of unsatisfactory elements, we can see that Pip has found Charles Dickens has found himself in Pip's lens. So he has presented his own self through Pip in such a grotesque manner, that in such a strange manner, that he don't wish to show himself in front of the people, but he is of the view that he is presenting his own personal experiences that he experienced throughout his childhood and his boyhood, when he was imprisoned also. So here we can see that his sensibilities towards crimes. He is of the view that the crimes, the the people who commit crime, they are in fact the creatures, the shackled creatures. They can never become the same after this, when they get something like crimes. They can never become the same person after that. So he was of the view, he was thinking of a special creature. He in fact I forgot the term that he uses for the people. Yes, irreclaimable wretches. In irreclaimable wretches, he says that the people who commit crimes, in fact, they are irreclaimable wretches and creatures of neglect. They can never become the simple people. So he is in fact, through this sensibility, he is showing himself that he still, as he has grown up, he has become an adult, but he still cannot forget his punishment that he got in during his imprisonment. So he cannot forget his days when he was imprisoned. So all the time in all novels he tried to show some autobiographical stances in his novels. For let's see, look how Pip and Magwitch are the round characters. He uses flat characters, round characters, stereotypical characters. This is another debate, but today I just wish to tell you how differently, how strangely he uses different characters, different situations, and different environments in the novel Heart of, Great Expectations. For now, my repugnance of him had all melted away, and in the hunted, wounded, shackled creature who held my hand in his, I only saw a man who had meant to be my benefactor. So here, how he finds a change in the personality of Pip, that first he see Magwitch as a he generates a sense of repugnance for Magwitch, but when he come forward and look that when Magwitch was the true benefactor, he was the true person who was in fact facilitating him by giving him monies, providing him money and for his establishment. And now his fears have been gone, and that picture that imprinted in his mind was vanished. And now he finds the Magwitch as a benefactor, not a, you can so, haunting uh, ghost, but a benefactor, and who had felt affectionately, gratefully, and generously towards me with great constancy through a series of years. So here he is thankful to Magwitch for his help to him. In fact, these are the words that he utters when Magwitch is on his deathbed. Towards me with great consistency. I only saw in him much better man that I had been to Joe. So here he is putting a comparison with Joe, that Magwitch was a more sensible, more generous personality than Joe. So this is this shift makes the Pip emotionally changed personality. So you can find an emotional change in Pip's character, where first he was hating Magwitch's character, but by now he is loving, he is comparing this character to Joe, who was his benefactor in the childhood life. So Pip can now see under Magwitch's unpleasant face a man of good heart and kindness. So here you can see that how he uses round characters, flat characters throughout his novels. He is pretty much familiar, he is pretty much expert with this technology, with this use of flat characters and round characters. So dear students, today we have learned that how Charles Dickens shows his grotesque characterization in the novel Great Expectations. You should learn again and again. You should listen my lecture again and again to clear your ideas. And for further information, for further knowledge, you can get this research papers from using these links, or using these references. So I recommend you to please use these links and download the research papers and try to digest them to better understand the situation in more details. So that's all for today's, dear students. I hope you enjoyed my session. Thank you so much. God bless you.